Hey guys, Dirt here at the news desk in my scenic basement here on PopCultureNetwork.com with the latest episode of Wrestling Feedback. Now, these are your questions that you have posted in the forums at PopCultureNetwork.com. Don't ask questions on YouTube. Please don't try to send me emails because I tend to just lose them. But come on over to PopCultureNetwork.com, join the forums, post questions, and we're going to do our best to answer them, start some discussions, and get conversations going on the message board. Again, these are your questions. I'm going to try my best to answer, and I'm going to try to answer them as honestly as I can, but if I don't know, I'll just make something up sounds plausible. How's that sound? First up, Crash Murdoch has a couple questions here. Is it true that WWE is looking to restart the Cruiserweight division again? No. There have been rumors, of course, from time to time, but for the most part, no. Their big focus right now in any sort of expansion is actually in the Latino-speaking markets. That's why guys like Sin Cara and the fake Sin Cara have been hired. That's why Rey Mysterio is getting such a big push and a call to come back. That's why Alberto Del Rio has been such a big deal. It's because they're trying to expand into Latin America and South America, and so that's where the push lies. Now, most of those guys are generally smaller and higher flyers, and so therefore they fit that kind of cruiserweight feel, but no, it is not specifically a cruiserweight push. Number 2, he said, whatever happened to managers in wrestling, and do you think that they are needed now? You know, as a former pro wrestling manager, I have to say that managers still play a very important role in the world of professional wrestling. They fall in the same category as valets. We just call them having a second. And basically, a manager or valet is there to talk for someone who is bad at doing promos. Someone who has the opportunity to really step up and step out and could be a huge star. They just don't get that opportunity because they're not the greatest on the microphone. Someone like, let's say John Morrison, who could really use having someone as his mouthpiece because he's not a good talker. One of the other great things you can do with managers is build a stable. You need the ability to bring guys together as a group, especially villains, so that you can mix and match their interactions on TV. You can have one guy in a feud with another guy, but if he's got a stable, you can mix up the matches and have him wrestle other guys in the stable trying to get to that one guy he wants to face. It's also good for setting up tag teams and for setting up matches like a Survivor Series type of match. I still think they are very much needed today. In WWE, they're not there anymore because Vince only wants those total package type guys. And I don't mean Lex Luger. I mean he wants another Rock or John Cena or Randy Orton, a guy who can cut promos, a guy who can make an appearance on movies, a guy who can, has the right build for being on TV, being in promotional photographs, and they're not willing to really do that job anymore of having a manager come in and talk to somebody. They feel if the guy can't learn how to talk, they're just not going to give him that push, even though they could be excellent performers, great entertainers, and fantastic wrestlers. Like someone say, maybe John Morrison, So I think that's what's going on with that. Next he says, do you think the loss of territories has hurt pro wrestling? Yes, very much so. The one great thing about territories is that people got a lot of experience in front of different crowds. They can find out what works and what doesn't. And if they, really die in front of one crowd in one territory, they move to another territory, it doesn't matter. Now, territories have actually been gone for the most part for a very long time, but the independent wrestling scene made up for a lot of that into the 90s and into the early 2000s, the aughts, if you prefer. And the independent wrestling scene did a really good job of pushing, people who you wouldn't normally see, giving them a lot of experience, getting them ready to go on TV. The problem is WWE looks at the independent wrestling territories, the independent wrestling leagues, federations, whatever, as basically just these glorified backyard wrestling teams. And if someone does a good job in one of these independent leagues, they just don't pay attention to them. They just don't feel like if you haven't gone through Florida Championship Wrestling, you're just not going to be someone that they're going to have a lot of interest in as time moves forward. And the funny thing is, a lot of the independent wrestling federations, territories, leagues, and whatever are much better better than any of the training they seem to get in Florida Championship Wrestling. So I think it has hurt a lot that people aren't getting a lot of that experience. Nowadays, the real only experience they're going to get in front of vastly different crowds, different audiences, people looking for different things, is actually only by going to Japan or Mexico, working with a lot of those crowds, and then they can kind of get that experience. But otherwise, it's just not happening anymore. Let's see here. Sweenholic, let's see, that's a comment, not a question, so it's kind of hard to follow up on comments that aren't really questions. Let's see here. The Hybrid one, he goes, do you think ROH is going to take away some of those TNA fans who do not like WWE anymore? And he's upset that they still have the computer at ringside for the Raw general manager. Well, I think actually the computer at ringside disappeared finally now in the Triple H era. They finally just took it away. Now, they may bring it back for an angle, I don't know, but yeah, it was kind of silly to see that computer at ringside even long after they'd given up on having the Raw general manager. As far as ROH, yes and no. ROH has already taken away some of those fans. They have a strong internet community. A lot of people paying for their internet pay-per-views and things like that. And those are the hardcore fans that are following TNA. Nobody really follows TNA as a casual viewer because the show just doesn't make any sense. The storylines are terrible, and most of the wrestling on TV is a minute or 2 minutes long. So as far as having a new TV show, will that steal fans away? I'm going to say right now, no. The production values aren't very high. In most markets, it's on in the middle of the night. Here in our town, it's on at midnight and 4 o'clock in the morning. So if you're someone who's up at midnight and 4 o'clock in the morning, it's not interfering with your viewing of TNA. It's not really taking people away. I think if they can up their production values, they might have the ability to start generating something. But Lucha Libre Masked Warriors has much better production output. It has some really great wrestling. Storylines have not been necessarily great, and it just hasn't really caught on because it's on at 10 a.m. Saturday mornings. So, the time that it's on TV actually makes a big difference. Production quality makes a big difference. The biggest problem ROH has is that its TV show now looks maybe as good as ECW did in 1996. You would think that in this day and age, the production would be a lot higher, and unfortunately it's not. Now, that may be something that picks up over time, but that is, when you're talking about picking up a casual fan, picking up a viewer, trying to get someone to follow your show, that does hurt it quite a bit, even though the wrestling itself may be superior. Getting people to actually tune in and pop and watch the first time takes a little bit more work. Because, let's face it, wrestling fans are shallow. All of us are shallow. Let's see here. Nathan here on the board asks about, he thinks that Triple H officially killed the CM Punk era. What do I think? Do I think that Triple H has gone out of its way to kill the hottest angle? Actually, it's funny, but CM Punk was never going to be a big angle in WWE. It was the World Championship title angle, but from day one of Triple H being the chief operating officer, that has been the number one story in WWE as far as WWE is concerned. I lamented at one point that they, brought CM Punk back too early. They were, speeding everything along in this, angle, trying to get him into this feud with Triple H, Kevin Nash, and all of that stuff. And I was told by someone who knows a lot of stuff happening on the insides of WWE that was because CM Punk versus John Cena was never a big storyline. CM Punk was never going to be a major push. That was not considered the hot angle in Titan Towers. The hot angle was Triple H. And you could watch this last week on Raw. They had that huge tag match in the middle of the show. And then the main event angle was Triple H and the whole vote of no confidence thing, which, let's face it, most people didn't care about. Now, Raw did a pretty good rating this week, but that's also because the sports that were on opposite of it did not get huge ratings, and so people tuned into wrestling. When they have hot shows on Monday Night Football and whatnot, it does hurt the WWE rating. So, it's just kind of one of those things where they never were going to push CM Punk in the first place, so it's not as if Triple H killed what was the hot angle. It was just that WWE never planned on doing anything about what turned out to be a very hot angle, and they just let it go instead of trying to embrace it and make something special out of it. All right, folks, that's going to do it for this episode of Wrestling Feedback here on PopCultureNetwork.com. Don't forget, if you want to leave a question, join the forums. You can send me an email, dirt@PopCultureNetwork.com, but most likely I'll lose it because I tend to do that. If you want to leave a comment on YouTube, feel free, but most likely I'm not going to take a look at it because YouTube is the ultimate hive of scum and villainy. So if you actually want to get in on the conversation, come to PopCultureNetwork.com, join the forums, come to the pro wrestling section, start hanging out with all these cool guys like Nathan, Crash Murdoch, Sweenholic, and the Hybrid One. You can ask your question, we'll answer them here on the show, and then hopefully further some more discussion. So that's going to do it for now. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you next time.
Dirt, call me.